Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are about to embark on an incredible journey through 700 years of mystical thought. What we're going to do is trace the evolution of Kabbalah, not as some single dusty old idea, but as a living, breathing tradition that radically changed and adapted in response to the crises of its time.
At the very heart of this whole story is a question I think we all ask ourselves at some point. How do we find meaning when the world around us feels fractured, even broken? It's that universal search for purpose, for a feeling that our actions, our lives, actually count for something. Well, what's so fascinating is that this ancient mystical tradition doesn't just give us one simple answer. Over the centuries, it offered four totally distinct, evolving answers. So think of this as a story in 4 chapters, with each chapter being a powerful, creative response to the challenges of its day. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first, what is Kabbalah? The word itself literally means that which has been received, which already gives you a clue that it's this intimate tradition passed down through the ages. I think the best way to think about it is less as a rule book and more like a prism. It's a way of looking at reality to see the hidden wiring, the deep connections between our own lives and the entire cosmos.
All right, so our story kicks off in medieval Spain. This is where these mystical ideas, which had been whispered about for a long time, finally started to take written form in a really profound way. This is the beginning, the era of what we call Zoharic Kabbalah.
And the masterpiece of this period, the absolute crown jewel, is a book called the Zohar, which means the Book of Splendor. Now, this isn't some straightforward theological textbook. It's this sprawling, poetic, sometimes baffling rereading of the Bible, all designed to map out the secret inner life of God.
The Zohar put some huge ideas on the table. It imagined the divine world as being made up of 10 Sephirot. These are like channels or emanations of God's energy, with names like wisdom, understanding, and love. And then it presented a truly wild idea, that there's a kind of flaw, a rupture within the divine structure itself. This flaw has caused the Shekhinah, the feminine presence of God, to be in exile. But, and this is the crucial part, it taught that our actions right here on Earth could actually have cosmic consequences and help heal that divine break.
Now, you have to understand, this knowledge was seen as incredibly potent, maybe even dangerous. For centuries, you couldn't just decide to study Kabbalah. It was this exclusive club reserved for a small group of older, married men who were thought to be spiritually ready for it. It was a secret, until history came crashing in. In 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain, and all of a sudden, that mystical concept of exile wasn't just some abstract story anymore. It was a brutal, painful, lived reality for hundreds of thousands of people. It was a massive collective trauma that just demanded a new, more radical explanation for how the world could have gone so wrong.
And this trauma gives birth to chapter 2 of our story. In a little town in northern Israel called Sephirot, a community of mystics, many of them refugees from Spain, gathered together. And one of them, a man named Isaac Luria, came up with a breathtaking new vision of the universe, a vision born directly out of catastrophe.
The absolute core of Luria's teaching is the concept of Tikkun Olam, which means repair of the world. He basically took that earlier idea of human responsibility and cranked it up to 11. In his vision, we humans weren't just helping God out a little bit. We were now essential partners in saving both God and the universe from a cosmic disaster that happened at the dawn of time.
Luria explained all this through this incredible 3-act cosmic drama. So, Act 1 is Tzimtzum. God, in order to create the world, had to first contract, to pull back and make an empty space. Act 2 is the Shevira, the shattering. When God poured divine light into this space, the vessels that were meant to hold it just couldn't handle the intensity, and they shattered, scattering holy sparks everywhere, into every single thing in our material world. And that brings us to Act 3, Tikkun, the repair. Our job, our entire purpose as human beings, is to find those hidden sparks of holiness and raise them back up to their source.
This is a massive, massive shift in thinking. The scholar Moshe Ito puts it perfectly. He says that in Luria's system, the individual is now responsible for everything, even for God. Every single action you take, every prayer, becomes this cosmic rescue mission. I mean, talk about purpose. But can you imagine what a crushing burden of responsibility to carry on your shoulders? So what happens when that burden just becomes too much to bear? Well, this intense pressure to heal the entire cosmos created this powerful hunger for a Messiah. People started thinking, well, maybe one special person could come and finish the job for all of us.
And that hope led to one of the most explosive and ultimately traumatic events in all of Jewish history.
In 1665, a prophet named Nathan of Gaza announces that this charismatic rabbi, Sabbatai Tzvi, is the long-awaited Messiah, and the news just catches fire. For over a year, this messianic frenzy sweeps through Jewish communities everywhere, from Europe all the way to Yemen. But then the dream completely imploded. Sabbatai Tzvi was arrested by the Ottoman Sultan and given a choice: convert to Islam or die. He chose to convert.
Let's pause here, because this was a huge departure from Luria's ideas. Lurianic Kabbalah insisted that redemption was this slow, patient, collective effort by the entire people over generations. The Sabbatean movement, on the other hand, gambled everything on a single, heroic figure who could get it all done in one fell swoop.
Now, the story should have ended right there, with the apostasy. But in one of the most audacious theological spin jobs in history, Nathan of Gaza claimed this wasn't a failure. It was the final, most dangerous stage of the mission. He argued that to rescue the last sparks, which were trapped in the deepest, darkest places, the Messiah himself had to descend into the cloak of evil to conquer it from the inside out.
The Sabbatean disaster left the Jewish world utterly shattered and disillusioned. So where do you go from there? Well, out of those ashes rose our fourth and final chapter, Hassidism. This new movement turned away from the huge cosmic dramas and the big messianic gambles, and instead, it turned inward, focusing on the personal spiritual journey.
The new spiritual ideal, the new buzzword, if you will, was devekut, which means clinging or communion. The goal wasn't some grand, difficult cosmic repair project anymore. Instead, Hasidim taught that you could find and connect with God's presence in everything, in the food you eat, in conversations with friends, in the most simple, mundane parts of your day. The goal was to sanctify the world not through struggle, but through joy.
This table really lays out the shift beautifully. For Luria, the goal was cosmic healing, Tikkun. For Hasidism, it was experiencing divine love, Devekuth. Where Luria saw a broken universe, Hasidism simply saw a hidden God waiting to be found. The role of the human being went from being a cosmic repairman to a joyful worshiper. And maybe most importantly, Kabbalah became democratized. It was no longer a secret for a tiny elite. It was an accessible, communal path for everyone.
So, what did they do with all that dangerous messianic energy that had caused so much trouble? Well, they found a really clever solution. They localized it. Instead of waiting for one big, universal Messiah, each community had its tzaddik, its righteous leader. This person was a spiritual guide, a channel for divine energy, but only for their specific community. It was a way to prevent another global meltdown. So, when you step back and look at the whole journey we've traced, you can really see the progression. Kabbalah evolves from being the secret knowledge of these tiny elite study circles to becoming the fuel for a massive worldwide messianic movement. And then finally, it becomes a lived daily spiritual practice for entire communities. It literally moved from the cosmos down to the kitchen table.
So after this incredible 700-year trip, what does any of it mean for us now? Well, this ancient tradition has left a pretty profound legacy that continues to echo today, often in ways we don't even realize.
That Lurianic idea of Tikkun Olam, it's become a global rallying cry for social justice and healing our planet. The Hasidic practice of Devekuth, it echoes so clearly in our modern search for mindfulness, that desire to find meaning and presence in our daily lives. And the whole journey of Kabbalah, really, from the cosmic to the personal, reminds us that maybe the most important spiritual path isn't out there somewhere, but right in here.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This entire history is a story of people finding these really creative, powerful ways to make sense of and to mend a broken world. So the question for us is, how might these ancient frameworks of cosmic repair, of finding hidden sparks, of joyful communion, give us tools to face the challenges in our own world today?